Self high five. Self high five.
Yo, it's me, it's DDP.
Hey, this is Dark Avenue, and remember, every legend was once a prospect.
Mic check 212, bitch. Mic check 212, bitch.
What is up, guys? This is DDP back with another edition of Mavs Fastbreak. The NBA season is nigh upon us, and the Mavericks season is just one more night after that. We got to wait until Wednesday, but we will have Maverick basketball back, and we now are led by the combination of Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porziņģis. Man, this is, I'll admit, it's a little bittersweet without Dirk for the first time, but this is exactly where we want to be right now, because there's something to be said, right? When you're a young team on the upswing, like just getting into the process of it, you can enjoy that ride a little bit. Whereas if you were dropped right into immediate, like, okay, we think we're good to win it all now, yes, that's exciting basketball, but it also then puts strenuous expectations, for instance, on your season, that suddenly you'll have people who are like, you didn't make the Western Conference Finals? What a disappointment. No, man. Look at where we've been and look at the talent we have now and how the future looks and make your assessment based on that. That's all I'm saying. I'm excited for this ride. You guys know, a lot of you know, I do have a little bit of a soft spot as well for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm originally from Norman, Oklahoma. So even though I was a Mavericks fan long before the Thunder even existed, I did have a soft spot for the Thunder. And then from the ages of about 17 till about 23, I was back living in the Oklahoma City area again. And so I saw a lot of their peak rise and all of that. I bring that up to clarify, they were garbage when they first showed up for one season. Then the next season they won something like 40 games. Then the next year they won 50 games. Then they were in the Western Conference Finals. Then they were in the NBA Finals. And then every year after that, it was constant belief that, okay, we are contenders and we are building. The fan base got spoiled early, but the problem is now that window has completely shut, now they're kind of like, I think they're kind of bitter to an extent. They didn't enjoy the ride as much as they should because it was too much, too successful, too fast. Again, obviously, if you can win a championship immediately, why wouldn't you? I get that. I'm not saying like they should have thrown games. I'm just saying enjoy the ride, appreciate what we're about to embark on, because we're about to have Luka Doncic, who looks like he could be an all-time great, with Kristaps Porziņģis, who looks like, he looks like he is a phenomenal all-star caliber player every year as well. I hesitate to say for him what his ceiling is in terms of all-time stuff. I think Luka's got the makings of that. That's why I think Luka is still the lead dog. This is Luka's team, and KP is the 1A or 1B, however you want to consider it in this case, to Luka's top dog status, but it is what it is. Shout out first in the house to Abraham Young. Then we got Jason Bryant. What's good, guys? Let's go Mavs, boo, Rockets, and Spurs. I agree. I know what I'm talking about. Dallas needs help, he says. They do need help. They are dealing with some injuries. I don't know. I'm starting to worry a little bit about Dwight Powell's availability for opening night. It seems like he is still hampered a little bit. I think it's a hamstring for him, I want to say. He's still been hampered. So that's something that they're going to have to figure out and try to work around. But there's a lot there. At least DeLon Wright hasn't been too hampered by it. If anything, I want DeLon Wright to be a little more aggressive for what we've seen in the preseason, because I feel like he is passing up a lot of shot opportunities because he's kind of looking for other guys to get shots on possessions. So like Luka will hit him with a dime and set him up, and he's like, you know what? If we work this ball around a little bit more, we might be able to get a good look for Luka or KP or Seth or someone like that. And it's like, no, dude, if you got the shot, take it. Take it by all means. So let's take a look here. Since we last went live, Milwaukee and Dallas played, and then you had a rematch between Dallas and Oklahoma City. I'm just going to tell you, I know most of you only care about what Luka and KP did in those games. KP in his home debut, nothing amazing. 24 minutes, 11 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, 4 of 13 shooting, only 2 of 9 on threes. The bounce back was Luka Doncic going 10 of 11 at the line. So after after I kind of dragged him a little bit through his free throw shooting, 5 of 10 in the preseason opener against the Thunder. He comes back the next game with a 10 of 11. I like that. Obviously, you don't want that to cancel out where it's like one game you're good, one game you're trash. But it looked like he responded well, and now it makes it a little easier to say, okay, that first game isn't as big of a deal. In the rematch against Oklahoma City, the Thunder didn't have Steven Adams or Chris Paul in their starting lineup, so the Mavericks had a major advantage there. Luka Doncic averaged about what I think you're going to see from him in the regular season. That's why I point this particular game out. He had in 27 minutes, his minutes will be up over that, 19 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. His field goal percentage wasn't great, but free throws were again pretty damn solid at a 9 of 11 mark. He also had a block and a steal and was a plus 21. Meanwhile, Kristaps Porziņģis, I've been talking about him. Hey, man, you got to get up on those boards, and I understand Steven Adams wasn't there. You didn't have to bang bodies as much. Yes, unfortunately, we saw Nerlens Noel swat KP's dunk attempt. That kind of sucked, but it's understandable. KP's never been a super explosive athlete in the first place. But KP gives you a solid in 26 minutes, 17 points, 13 boards, 7 of 21 on field goals. So I'm not worried. Innie and I even kind of talked about in a stream a couple weeks ago, we got to give him time to knock the rust off and really find his rhythm. Once he starts knocking down the open looks he's getting, the spot-up looks he's getting, he should be much, much better in terms of his field goal percentage. 3 of 9 on threes, that's not great. He did have a block and was a plus 20. A big thing for me here, as Jason Bryant calls out in the comments, I want DeLon Wright to be a little more assertive, not just in terms of taking the open corner three if it's available to him, if Luka hits him with a dime pass and sets him up. I want him specifically to attack, to break down a defense. I understand you want Luka to be your maestro and all that. That's great. That's awesome. But every now and then you're going to have to take things as well yourself. Tara T, what's good? Let's see here. Are there any trade rumors on the Mavs right now? They're not going to make a trade before the start of the season, I don't think. I think they're going to roll into the season with this as is. I am working on that trade piece now for trade deadline targets. I'm going to have that ready for you guys before opening night Wednesday. But until then, I don't think they're going to make a deal between now and the season opener against the Wizards. It's a big situation for them, a big opportunity to kind of see what they got. You got to see what you got with all the parts you have. Now, I mentioned earlier some concern about Dwight Powell. Maxi Kleber to me is not a starting center. As you talk about having rebounding issues, Maxi Kleber has not addressed that for you very well in the preseason. Luka has continued to rebound very well. I think, like I said, KP had a much better rebounding game this last one. Yeah, Kleber for reference, 21 minutes, 14 points. Hey, that's great. 4 boards. Not great. Not great. DeLon Wright, though, 27 minutes, 9 points, 7 boards, 3 assists. I want to see him try and create a little bit more. We know he can do it. We know he's capable of that. And I don't want to just see it in terms of hey, well, Luka's out of the game, so now I'll do it. I want him occasionally to try and make something happen himself, even if it's in a creating thing. Luka, we know Luka is a playmaker. But if you have someone who can take just a little bit of that burden off his shoulders every now and then while he's on the floor, that's going to help immensely. If you don't put it all on him and you say, hey, Luka, check this out. You go set yourself up, and I'm going to create for you. I'm going to get you the wide open look. That is what Dallas needs. They need another playmaker to put next to him. And DeLon Wright has shown flashes of it. We've seen flashes of it from Seth Curry as well. Now, I know he left I think it was the Bucks game with a knee contusion. Only reason that drew any interest from me at all was because his should have been last season here. Last he was with us, but not actually playing. We heard something similar like that in the preseason, or maybe it was camp, and then he ended up missing the entire season with a stress reaction in that leg. I don't think it's the same leg. I think it's the right leg this time. But that is something that when I heard Seth Curry left the game with a right knee contusion, I was like, no, we need the shooting. Let's see. I know what I'm talking about. KP needs to see regular season minutes because this preseason games are not the same. I agree 100%. Preseason is not the same And I think KP will get some better. Now, he'll go up against stiffer competition, so to speak. But at the same time, he's going to have a chance to kind of get, what's the word I'm looking for here? Introduced to the offense smoothly. That's not the word I was looking for. I just kind of went with a rough synonym in that case. But he'll get a chance to get introduced to the offense and to kind of work his way into it a little bit, because while he is our number 2 option, this is new to him. This is new territory. Now, he's been practicing with us, so it's not like it's foreign territory completely, but Rick Carlisle's system is a little bit different, and even though Carlisle should be able to use him similar to how the Mavericks used Dirk previously, there's still going to be a little bit of an adapting process because KP in New York was not used that way at all. So KP's 3.5-year career or whatever looked nothing like what he's doing now. So now, playing full speed against NBA competition, playing balls out against you, you're going to have to take that into consideration. He will not immediately, in all likelihood, hit the ground at a dead sprint. Like, he's not going to drop 30 points in 6 of the first 12 games or something like that. Like those 2 arbitrary numbers I just picked out of the air. Just in all likelihood, though, he's going to start a little bit slow. And that's okay, as long as you understand that, and as long as we see progress, as long as we see him continuing to get into full game shape, the field goal percentage start to creep up after a few games, and particularly him start to knock down those open looks that he's going to get in 3. The 2-man game with him and Luka looks nasty. Just nasty in the best kind of way. So there's no doubt in my mind, and we've been talking all offseason how their games complement each other very, very well. You're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, having to guard them in the pick and roll. Now, when they're guarding you and you're able to attack them, it's a little bit different. That's where you get some concerns. But Luka and KP in the pick and roll game, you saw in, I think it was the OKC game, Luka was just a flick of the wrist behind the back pass to KP for a wide open 3. KP knocks it down. That's the kind of stuff that they're going to be able to do. Night in, night out, they're going to get those looks. Tomorrow night, the Mavericks play the Clippers in Los Angeles. That'll be something interesting there for them. I know the Clippers are winless thus far, but it's still something where it's a very talented team. It's a very talented team, so you're going to get an assessment, kind of a feel of where you stand in some respect. KP, meanwhile, for those wondering, says that he's not even concerned about his knee anymore. He's not even thinking about his knee anymore. In his mind, it's just about shaking off the rust, but physically, he feels right. And that's good to know. That's really good to know for the Mavericks because they need it. He's been exposed a little bit early on in this preseason defensively. It's early. It's a really small sample size. So I know like Tim Cato of The Athletic was writing about this. He's going to have to improve a little bit. Teams are trying to keep him away from the basket so they can negate some of his shot blocking tendencies. That's going to be a real threat, especially when teams try and attack him in the pick and roll. But Dallas is going to have to find a way to protect him in that regard, to set him up so that he can play cleanup on the back end of the defense, that he can be that predominant rim protector for you, and that Maxi Kleber can play kind of accenting to him, play second fiddle to him in that regard. That'll go a long way, but early on, he's getting abused a little bit defensively in the pick and roll, and that's going to have to change. And just his defense in general, that to me looks like the part of his game that might be the furthest away right now. I'm not terrified of it. I think he can get to where he needs to be, but it is something that if you look at it right now, just kind of on paper, you're thinking, I thought that'd be further along than it looks like it is. So just something to consider there. Why is my viewer count not showing? All right. Oh, there it is. What's up to the 24 people in the house we got here? You're all lovely. Kevin Hoffman, sorry I'm late. Work is killer. No problem at all, Kevin. Glad to have you aboard. Appreciate you watching. Gleb, what is up, dude? We got like 24 people in here. Come on, son. It's cool, though. This is just kind of an open forum at this point. We are a week away from the start of real Mavericks basketball. We're just kind of talking a little bit through what we've had in the last week or so, what some of these preseason games have looked like, what our feelings and thoughts are related to this team, and kind of where we feel like the team is at. Now, there is a logjam of sorts people are talking about as well regarding the point guard position. They're looking at Jalen Brunson. I get it. Dallas does have a little bit of a backup there because Luka kind of plays the point. But DeLon Wright is listed, if you look at the depth chart in terms of how it lays out. DeLon Wright is listed as the point guard, but Jalen Brunson has played very well thus far in the preseason as well. He continues to build on last year. I'll still say I don't know how much higher his ceiling is from where he is today, but he's a damn good second-round steal. I will say that. To get him at the top of the second round was phenomenal for Dallas. As good as the Luka pick is, and don't get me wrong, obviously it's franchise-altering good. The Brunson pick in the second round, the top of the second round, is icing on the cake. Even if it was an off year and you just wound up with Brunson, you'd be like, holy crap, we got this guy in the second round? Getting him with Luka is just like, dude, we kicked ass in the draft this year. So there's a lot to like there. I know we took Kostas in that draft and that ended up not working out. I understand people are still a little bit upset about that. Not everything ends up working out. But I have a really good feeling about Brunson being around for many, many years. Maybe not an everyday starter, but certainly in the thick of that rotation, and definitely situationally starting at times, depending on the matchup, depending on health, rest, whatever. Let's see here. Eastside Harold, what is up? I don't even mind if you're coming in to troll if you're donating money, but I do see what you went for there. I'm onto your game.
Eastside Harold donated $2 through Super Chat. Texans, Rockets, and Astros all day.
That's clever. That is a clever way to get your trolling across the board. Working my own system against me. I could have muted the audio for it, but I decided to let it fly. I let it fly for this one time. Appreciate the donation, though, Eastside Herald. So, let's see here. Curry played 4 minutes per game. WTF. Curry did not get a lot of preseason burn, I know. You'll see that up more. I think after the knee contusion, they took it easy. They took it a little bit conservatively. Again, his best year of his career was here in Dallas, and he shot 45% last year. He didn't get a lot of, he only started, I think, one game in Portland last year, but he shot 45% from three. His best year of his career was 2016-17 in Dallas, in which he averaged, I think, 12.4 points, shot like 43% from three. And in that case, he wasn't just a spot-up shooter. And by the way, his spot-up shooting, he's about 50% last year. But his three-point shooting overall last year was 45%. If you get him in a good situation here in Dallas, which I think he's in a better situation now, maybe not in terms of minutes, and that could be a little bit of a draw, but in terms of the talent around him, it's night and day compared to what he had in 2016-17. And he was a spark plug for that team. He was a playmaker. He was a much more versatile scorer than you've really seen him be anywhere else in his career. And that's why I'm not terribly concerned that he's only played limited minutes in the preseason, because I think, he got banged up. They're protecting him. He's, 29 years old. They don't need to like be like, oh, we need to develop him. No, you know what he is. Just get him healthy, get him out there, and let him knock out the lights as soon as he starts catching up for threes. Big homie from the D, what up? Brunson is like Mark Jackson. He'll be solid for 10 or 12 years. Hey, man, if you get 10 or 12 years out of Brunson, that is phenomenal. I like Brunson a lot. The only thing I caution people about Brunson, if there is a mid-season trade of any significance, the opposing team will most likely want Brunson in the deal. And if it's the right situation, if it's the right kind of player you can get in return, I bet you anything Dallas eventually relents and trades Brunson. I'm not saying I want them to, and I don't even know an example to give you off the top of my head about like, oh, this is who they're going to want. This is who Dallas is going to want. And this team is going to want Brunson because he fits their need. I'm just saying he is one of our best, most valuable players. And given he's in his second year on a rookie contract and he's already been so effective, there are going to be teams that want him. And that's going to be hard to hang on to him and get a player of significance in return. Luka could average 27 points easy this year. I won't go easy on that. His field goal percentage, it's preseason, but his field goal percentage still hasn't been great. I think his numbers were pretty strong last year until the trade deadline. They made the trade. I've talked about this before. We've been in a long off season, so you've heard this. The trade for the 5 starters, he takes on a bigger burden of the offense. Those numbers tail off a little bit. Field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, etc. His numbers still haven't been where I want them to be in terms of field goal percentage this preseason. KP's definitely have not been, but again, I understand his especially. I'm more so interested in seeing him round into form as he gets just a little bit. I'm not worried about Luka in preseason. Preseason, I think he's having fun out there still. You still see him smiling and all that, but I think he understands that it's not the same. Like when your entire shtick is about thriving on the competitive nature of it. In preseason, you're almost running as not a half speed, but you're almost running at just a lower gear, so to speak. You're not as dialed in. So once we get to the regular season, I think Luka's numbers will bump back up, but we'll see. Brunson is an Eagles fan. Well, he did go to Villanova, so that doesn't shock me, even though it's not an appealing thing to hear. Do you think we have a bench to help the starters out, asks Abraham Young. Yes, I do think we have a very good bench this year. Before Borea's injury last year, his Achilles tear, we had one of the probably 3 best benches in the league, and that was the strength of our team. That's why once we struggled early in the year, like through the first 10 to 14 games. Then we really seemed to right the ship. Our bench was great, and then Barea went down, and that second unit kind of tailed off because Barea is a good playmaker. Now, Barea's back. I don't expect a whole lot in that regard, but at the same time, I think the second unit is still going to be able to offer a lot of scoring because you're going to have Seth on that. You're going to have Barea. You're going to have Brunson. You're going to have a lot of guys that can get you some points and that can make some things happen for you. So I feel good about where the bench is at. I do think that they will be able to help. I don't think the Mavericks are a great team. I think that they are a very even keel across the board team. Like, I look at the second unit and I think, obviously the second unit doesn't have anything, shocker, like Luka or KP. But if you compare the rest of the starters to the bench, I feel like it's a pretty straight line, maybe a slight for the bench, maybe a tick down or even up. I mean, you could argue, depending on the different aspects they bring to the game, like Maxey versus Dwight Powell, how their games impact the on-the-court product, what you think about it. But I think that they're a good bench unit. I expect them to be a good bench unit again this year. I think they are going to be a very potent offense off the bench as well. And part of that will come from Brunson in his year 2. Part of that will come from just a little bit that Barea can still add to the mix. You'll have better shooting coming off the bench as well with Curry. So I feel good about that. I feel good about the bench. That's actually not my concern. My concern remains defense and rebounding. I think if you look back, Brunson would be a top 10 pick, if not 5. Says Solar. The thing about Brunson, because he stayed so long in college, that kind of worked against him. Because nowadays in the NBA, when you stay that long in college, it's almost held against you, even though it doesn't need to be. Like, teams want guys that are 19 or 20 years old. So when you're coming out already 21 or 22, they're kind of looking at you and going like, yeah. They probably looked at Brunson and thought, I don't know how much higher his ceiling is. And at his age and everything like that, there's less of a window to develop him. I think Brunson would have gone immediately in the second round after, like, if the Mavericks hadn't taken him, I think he would have gone pretty much the next pick or 2 after. what worked against him as a first-round pick, I think, was his age and the perception that where he ended his college career in terms of his ability and effectiveness, that his ceiling wasn't too much higher. And I think there's a discussion to be had there, but he's got a lot of savvy and he brings a lot to the game. I actually really like Jalen Brunson. I know sometimes some people think that I'm not a Brunson fan. I am. I hesitate to say, hey, plug him in. He's my everyday starting point guard. He's an undersized point guard. That's actually one of the issues when I talk about defense for this team too. We have a lot of undersized guards. And although our starting lineup, hey, if we roll with DeLon Wright and Luka, and Rick Carlisle still doesn't want to really make it clear who the fifth starter is, but if we have Justin Jackson or Dodo, they're both 6'9" with a 6'11" wingspan, that guy, KP, and Dwight Powell, you got a really big starting lineup in that case, but pretty much the majority of your bench is some more undersized guys. So you're going to have to figure out how to kind of play into that and work with that. Kevin Hoffman, I think Brunson is the perfect replacement for Barea, just younger. I think he's a very good replacement for sure. Like Barea, he's not going to be he's an undersized guy. He's not going to be able to bring any kind of real defense. Barea could draw a charge. Barea was really good at selling contact and drawing charges, but they're going to have to figure that out. I do think Brunson could fit that role pretty well moving forward, though. I could be wrong, but didn't Curry get injured in the Thunder game and they decided not to play him for the rest of the game? Correct, Gleh. Are you concerned with KP shooting percentages this preseason? Asks VZ, kills it for the win. A little, with a caveat, a little bit, because they have been kind of like 17 points on 21 shots. You're like, But again, for a guy that hasn't played basketball in 20 months at full speed, full competitive nature, I understand that. It's going to take him time to knock the rust off, and Innie and I talked about that a couple weeks ago. Give him time to knock the rust off. He's going to get a lot of great looks. Just trust that at the very least they're going to even out percentage-wise with what the arc of his career has looked like. And he should get easier looks to reach those kind of plateaus as far as like the field goal percentage and the three-point percentage as well. So I'm not terribly worried, but just understand it's going to take a little bit of time. This is full speed, full throttle. That's why they've given him already more minutes in this preseason than I actually expected them to give KP. They avoided playing him in the back-to-back, but I'm actually a little surprised by his overall minutes count. But when you're coming back from 20 months and 3 days or whatever it was between his last game and then his first preseason game, it's understandable. So I think it'll even out, but early on I would say just be patient and understanding that it's going to take time to get back to those levels. Luka averaged 21 points last year. If his free throws would be better and a couple plays more, he'll be unstoppable. I get what you're saying. 21 last year, and he shot only 71%. I don't remember his free throw percentage off the top of my head, but I know it was the low 70s. Yeah, he needs to improve there. And aside from that first preseason game, that looks to have improved, and that's good. If he can do that, and he'll get more looks, he'll be more in control of the offense the whole year this year, as opposed to the first 20 or so games kind of being caught in that rookie bubble where he's being somewhat froze out by the veterans, even though people acted like I was making stuff up in that case. Like, there's no freeze out happening. It's just DeAndre pushing him out of the way for rebounds, and Wes Matthews not passing to him, Harrison Barnes not passing to him. And I mean, it was there. I think they weren't ready to hand the keys to the offense over to the rookie. That's what it was. And eventually, over time, he took control of it because his play was too undeniable, where eventually they were like, yeah, all right, this kid's nice. We should go with him a little bit more. And then after all those guys moved out, it's like, all right, Luka, here you go. Congrats. Last 29 games, this team is yours. Even though it pretty much already been headed that direction anyway. But it changed the dynamic. So, yes, if he can improve his free throw shooting, that will bump up those percentages. Shut up, Siri. No, I'm not talking to you. Go away. That will bump up his percentages in that regard. And then, yes, a couple more plays per game. you could see better. That's why I projected about 23.5, 24 points a game for him this year. But 27, that feels a little pushing it. But I would certainly welcome it. I just think that's a little bit too big of a jump. Dallas needs a third option, a player that can get 16 to 19 a game. This whole preseason has shown that. Yeah, and that's what I've been talking about. That's why I think they make the trade deadline move. Donnie Nelson kind of suggested the other day that they do have a plan in place. I shared it on the page. Let me get his exact explanation here just so I can make sure I'm doing justice to his quote and I'm not just paraphrasing around it too much. Let's see. Donnie Nelson says, the goal this year is to make the playoffs, then draft a player in 2020 and take the next step on the court. Then add more talent in 2021 when the team could create tens of millions of dollars in cap space. Quote, it's a good draft in 2020, and then we have free agency the following year. So I think you could see a nice little voice trails off, but he's making the gesture of like steps. A nice little building block, so to speak. But I think that they could look and see about doing something as early as the deadline this year, because there's going to be sellers. There's sellers every year. Every year in the NBA seems to involve some kind of blockbuster. And the Mavericks, I think if they're in the thick of that chase, they could certainly find themselves getting their modern day kind of Caron Butler trade. And I think that would elevate this team a lot and help them sneak into the playoffs. Potentially. Sickham 800. Justin Jackson stayed, and I think even more people downgrade him for the time he was in college. I think that's true as well. I think some people want to kind of put a cap on him in that regard. They look at his game and they're like, I don't know about it. But there's a lot of nice elements that he brings offensively that you just won't get out of Dodo. I know we talk about Dodo and say, hey, and I've said it too, if Dodo could somehow give you a good three-point shot, say 35%, dude, he would be a hellacious starting 3-and-D option for you. The problem is he can't do that. He can slash to the rim. He can defend multiple positions. He's a better rebounder than Justin Jackson for sure. That's a big weakness in Jackson's game. But he's not a dude that can shoot threes. His best year of his career was like 30%, and that was last year. He's been around, 4 or 5 years? Like, at this point, you can always add the shot. I understand that. But at this point, there's not been a lot to suggest he's going to become that guy. Meanwhile, Justin Jackson, 37% in college at UNC. ACC Player of the Year. 37% at Sacramento, his last full season there. Shooting 36% last year before the trade to the Mavericks. And then 37% the rest of the year with the Mavericks. So there's a lot you look at and you say, okay, I like what I'm seeing here. He can add a great shot. He's got a great floater game too, which is really underrated. I am constantly making gestures with this hand and counting on my fingers. Anyone else notice that? Tell me in the comments if you notice that, because I notice it. Let me switch hands and change it this way. He's got a really underrated floater game as well that I think the Mavericks need to try and incorporate a little bit. Not saying you want to have him going one-on-one off the dribble a whole lot, but if you can set him up where he's coming off a screen, catch the ball atop the key, and while his man's not quite set, allow him to attack that way, allow him to attack while he's already got the edge, I think you could really see him incorporate a nice floater to his game that we talked the year before about Dennis Smith Jr. trying to incorporate that, and it just never came together. Damn it, I'm back to the left hand. It never came together. I think we could see more of that from Justin Jackson, and then you add in his three-point game. Defensively, his points per possession allowed are pretty ballpark the same with Dorian Finney-Smith. Again, it's just the rebounding, and he's going to have to make some of those hustle plays. He added about 20 pounds of muscle. The team and the coach seems pretty happy with his development over the summer. That's great, but we need to see it in action now. Whether he starts or whether Dodo starts as the fifth starter, I don't know. I mean, hell, Rick's trying to throw us off by throwing Courtney Lee around. So we'll see. Courtney Lee's the forgotten man. Rigor, what's up? What's your projection for the Mavs standing 20 games in? Let me take a look at the exact schedule here for the Mavericks before I try and give you that estimate here. I'll run you through the schedule, though, and what I think. All right, Wizards, I think that's a win. Pelicans, new look Pelicans, I think that is probably, it's a winnable game, but I'm going to say right now with where you are and where I think KP is, that's probably a loss early in the year. Because I think KP doesn't have the rust knocked off yet. I think that's going to be, it's a nationally televised game. I think that's going to be a Zion show-out night. Portland, that's going to be a loss, unfortunately. Denver, that's going to be a loss. Lakers, that's a loss. So let me see. We're not starting strong. Let's see. 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4. Cleveland, that's a win. 2-4. Orlando, I think that's a win. 3-4. New York, I think that's a win. 4-4. Memphis, I think that could be a win. 5-4. Boston, that's probably a loss. New York again on the 14th. Wow, you get the Knicks out of the way really early in the year. New York probably gets you one of those. I think Dallas through 20 games. I'm going to stop doing the play-by-play going through the whole thing because I realize that's probably not engaging content for you guys. I'm going to say this. You got, after that Knicks game, you got Toronto, San Antonio, Golden State, Cleveland, Houston, the Clippers, and Phoenix to round out November. I think Dallas, if you're sitting through 20 games around 500, I know that's not a sexy number by any means, but keep in mind, 3 years ago, this team started, was it 3 years ago? It was, Seth Curry last time he was here. 3 years ago, this team started 4-21 through the first 25 games. Abysmal. Then you had the next year, I think they started something like, I don't know over the course of 25 games where they were, but I know they started the year something like 2-8 through 10, and then the year after that was like 3-7. Like, it has been rough sledding in the early part of the year, and it could be again this year. But if you can come out through 20 games at or just below 500, considering where you've been in the last 3 years, that's a big step forward, especially because the season for the first, like, I know early on, like, as I was listing those first 5 games, you probably heard loss, like assumptions. You could certainly beat one of those teams, certainly, but it's going to be tough and you're not going to be the favorite. But you probably heard through the first 5 or 6 games, you're like, dude, he's projecting all losses. But after that, it lightens up considerably. So by the time you get through 20 games, you're like, dude, you might be a favorite in close to half of those games. And that's a real big step in the right direction. That's why when I started this stream, I was talking about appreciating where we are in the process and enjoying the ride. Don't just automatically say, hey, we got Luka and KP. If we don't make the playoffs, this season's a bust. No, I think that's too harsh. Certainly, if you then go beyond that and say, if we get beat in the first round in less than 6 games, that's a bust. No. What is you doing? Don't do that. Appreciate the fact that we have a young, talented team on an upward swing. We're just now starting that swing up toward contention again. And we got a 24-year-old stud and a 20-year-old looks like potential all-time great if he can stay healthy. And Luka, like, enjoy what we have and what we're doing because this team is going to get really good. They will get really good. I believe within the next 3 years, we are back in the thick of contention. Now, someone, feel free to take note of the date. October 16th, 2019, DDP is calling a Mavericks returning to contention within 3 years. I get it. It might be earlier than that. I said within. I gave myself some wiggle room. But there's a lot for this team to do. I'm just saying, don't get hung up on the early struggles of a young team because those are going to happen. If it's the Thunder, in their case, when they first got to Oklahoma City, they had one terrible year, and then they pretty much went to, hey, we're a playoff team. Hey, we're a contender. And they stayed that way with that expectation for the next, 8 years. And by the time that window finally completely closed, which you could say it did a year or two ago, or you could say it just now did, whatever, it closed, and again, I'm from Oklahoma, and I know a lot of people there. I know a lot of people who they love Thunder basketball and they're still like curious to see what this new team looks like. But you will hear people who say something along the lines of, yeah, I didn't really appreciate the ride. It was so, by year 4 or 5, it was pretty much championship or bust. And that was it. Like, they had a very short honeymoon phase, and then it was like, now go win it, damn it. And then it ended. Now all those guys are gone, and it's like, well, I kind of wish I had that back and I could just enjoy it a little bit longer. That's all I'm cautioning here. Let's see. It's crazy how most of Brunson's teammates from Villa got drafted before him when he was always at least the second best player. Agreed. I think it's the age prospect, the age thing that kind of hampered him in that regard. That and the belief that he didn't have a much higher ceiling than what he had already shown. Do you think Josh Reeves makes the roster this year? I think Josh Reeves is going to see a lot of time with the Legends. I do think you could see him a little bit this year, but I think that he's going to have to take some time to continue developing with the Legends. I like a lot of what he can bring to this team. I just think that Rick historically doesn't like playing rookies anyway. I know that's been forced to change in recent years, obviously with Dennis Smith and Luka and just where the team was, but Rick does not like giving a lot of minutes to rookies a lot of the time. And unless it's indisputable, like Luka and Brunson, and even with Dennis Smith in his rookie year, Rick kind of kept his minutes in check. Like, there were definitely times where you're like sitting there like, are we going to get the kid back in the game? Because what are we doing here? You know, it just depends. But I think that Reeves could get a little bit of burn, but not anything significantly. I think he's going to take more time. Baller Brunson says, Hyper Emperor, what's up? Teflon Breed, what's good? Where do you think Curry's averages are this year? It's difficult to project a points per game for a bench player. He was, like 8 last year with Portland. I'm willing to bet that he's right about 10 points, maybe a tick above or below 10 points, anywhere from like 9.8 to 10.6 points per game for Curry. I don't think he's going to get as many minutes as he got his previous one season through here, but I do think he's going to be a weapon that can knock down something like, minimum 2 threes a game most nights, and could hit 3 or 4 certainly for you, which will open things up otherwise. So I think he'll fit a role kind of like that. He's not going to blow you away. Some people laughed when I said he could be an X factor for this team. I think they're not paying attention to history. They're just looking at like, his points per game and his age. He's 29. Why do you think he's going to matter more than Blair? Actually, take a look. Take a look at what he did here. Take a look at his style of play while he was here, and then see how he fit in Carlisle's system. Compare that now with the talent he has around him now that he damn sure didn't have back then. And it's not so hard to see how, even if he can just be around 10, 11 points a game, let's say from high 9s to low 11s, if he can do that for you, dude, that's already a great impact. If you're talking about like your, fourth, fifth highest scorer, that's effective for you. And that is, hey, say it with me, an X factor off the bench. Reeves is a great energy hustle guy for sure. Do I think we'll win our first 5 games? All 5? No. As I just talked about that a moment ago, the schedule is crazy hard through the first 5. You get the Wizards. That's winnable. You should beat the Wizards, to be clear. You get the Pelicans. That's winnable, but going to be tough because it's at New Orleans. Portland, that's going to be real tough. It's at home, but still, I don't like your chances against Portland. You're not going to be favored. Could you get them? Sure. You've tripped them up a couple times in recent years, but I'm not going to make the assumption that it happens. Denver, that's the 2 seed from last year, and it's at Denver, mile high. I don't like those odds at all. So through 4, I got you at best 2-2 there, and then you also have the Lakers after that. So I could see Dallas being something like 2-3 through 5, or maybe 1-4. It just depends, man. It might start rocky at the very start, but then it softens up. Then you get Orlando, then you get the Knicks, then you get the Grizzlies, you get Boston, yeah, but then you get the Knicks again, and you just gotta ride it out. It's the season. There are, especially in the Western Conference, nothing but hard games, pretty much. Not nothing but mostly all hard games. Gameeler, are you concerned about KP not attacking the rim, or is it too early? I think it's too early. I think he's might modify his game and his style of play a little bit, but I think he's going to be more of the shooter rather than the attack the rim and try and dunk on guys guy that he might have been a little bit in the past. When you're 7'3", do you want him to be able to dunk on guys? Sure. But, they're still getting him involved in pick and rolls and alley-oops and all of that. Getting him rolling to the basket a little bit. But his main bread and butter here is going to be the fact that he can be that mid-range shooter, that he can be the pick-and-pop player, and the guy who can take it himself a little bit if he needs to. He can spot up for three and knock it down there as well. So I think you're going to look at that kind of model where they're going to try and preserve him and not risk him with any unnecessary collisions or, freight train scenarios going toward the basket, because you can step into a little bit of a tough situation there, a dangerous situation for a guy his size and the contact there. He's already taken a couple scary falls this preseason. He got right back up, thankfully, and nothing was wrong. But there's been a couple times where he went down, and I was just like, ah! Like, I didn't like it. It freaked me out. Oh, man. But no, I'm not terribly worried about it. He might not do it as much as he did back in New York, but I'm not worried. I think he'll be plenty effective. Donnie, it's a 40-player draft. Woj, Mavericks are going down to 45, says Glad. Well, here's the thing. So you're talking in that case about the trade for Isaiah Roby. Welcome to the family, Camila Riviera. Hopefully I said that close to right. But yes, when the Mavericks traded down from 37 to 45, the entire intent was to pick up 2 extra draft picks, 2 extra second-round picks. If you recall, those 2 second-round picks were then dealt in a sign-in trade to Memphis for DeLon Wright, who the Mavericks then were able to sign to, like a 3-year, $27 million deal? I think that's what the number was. He's making about, $9 million a year. He's a very underrated, versatile defender, can slash to the bucket. He can finish well around the rim, can rebound really well for a point guard. His biggest problem is that he's never been able to be a starter in the league. He's 27, but he's never really been given the keys to the offense. And I don't mean that as the main guy. I just mean like the guy, the starting point guard on a team. He was behind Kyle Lowry. He was behind Mike Conley. Now he's finally got the chance to step out and do something. And if Dallas had made the move for him, had given him an offer sheet at the start of free agency like they wanted, Memphis would have had 3 days to do something about it, to match the offer, meaning Dallas would have had to crazy overspend to get him, or Dallas could have done what they did, in which they said, all right, let's talk to him now. We're going to talk to him, see if he wants to actually come here and sign this new deal with us. It's more money than he's ever gotten, and we can guarantee him what he wants, which is a starting role on a young, talented team. And so, yeah, it made sense to him, and so Dallas made that trade. So trading down for Isaiah Roby from 37 to 45, that I didn't even talk about Isaiah Roby. I think he's raw as hell. He may never make it on the team, but I do like his potential. He's got a little bit of a Swiss Army knife kind of vibe to him. I could see him being a good role player for us in time. So we'll see, but he's going to take time. In the meantime, if all we got out of that deal was DeLon Wright, sign me up. I'm down. I don't think that was the correct gesture for that. I guess I should have dramatic signing, but regardless, DeLon Wright I think is worth that deal alone. Getting out of it what you did. Honestly, got a mini heart attack when Porziņģis jumped and landed on the floor. For sure. I know exactly that feel, Neil. Let's see here. 21 games, just over a quarter of the season. If they are 500, that's a win. I agree. Michael Thomas, Big Blues. What up? Tim Hardaway Jr. has been somewhat efficient. Do you think that trend will continue? I think Tim Hardaway Jr. can be a really good player for us off the bench. When I was talking about the bench earlier, I'd even bring up Tim Hardaway Jr., but I think Tim Hardaway Jr., if you talk to any my frequent co-host from Mavs Fastbreak, he would tell you that he could be any optimistically wants to put Tim Hardaway Jr., pencil him into that 6 Man of the Year discussion. I don't know that I'd go that far, but I will say I think that Tim Hardaway Jr. can be an efficient player for us off the bench. When the Mavericks acquired him in the Porziņģis deal last year, I actually wrote an article, and this might end up being a bad take from me. I wrote an article talking about how he could have a Monte Ellis-like impact for the Mavericks. Now, I didn't mean in the sense of like, oh, their style of play is the same. Not at all. I was talking about their effectiveness they could have in the pick and roll, because in last year in New York, Tim Hardaway Jr. was actually very lethal in the pick and roll, more so in terms of percentages than a lot of big names in the league. And I felt like that could translate well in Dallas, where the pick and roll is so heavily used and they needed more firepower anyway. I think he can be effective for you. He's played well, to your point, in the preseason. Do I think that trend can continue upwards? I think so. I mean, if there's one thing we know about Tim Hardaway Jr., he's going to take his shots. He's not going to shy away from his opportunities. 13 points in 22 minutes in the last game, 3 of 3 on threes. If he can give us that, hell yes, give us that. Let's see. I want to take a look back at what he did against the Bucks again. Against the Bucks, 25 minutes, 10 points, 2 of 2, 2 of 6 on 3. That's kind of the thing with Hardaway Jr., right? Like, that is the thing that gives me pause. Is last year when he came into Dallas, he played about 12 to 14 games before he was lost for the year, I think. It might have been a stress reaction too. He had to have like a rod inserted into his leg to recover. But he averaged 15 points a game in Dallas, which you're like, hey, great. He averaged 14 points and took 15 shots. It was something like that where you're like, ugh. If there's one thing we know about him, he will take his shots. He will always look for his shot. And on the nights he's hitting it, that's really good to have coming off the bench. And at times in your starting lineup even. And on the nights he's not, let's try and get some more Seth out there or something like that. He's going to have his options. He's going to have his nights. I like him. I think he can be effective for you. Is his contract bloated? Yes. But, if it was what was needed to complete the KP deal, you took on him and Courtney Lee. Courtney Lee, I think you'll be able to get out of, shedding him at the deadline as part of a trade because he's a contract falling off after this year. Hardaway Jr. has 2 more years left, including this year. So you're going to be harder pressed to get rid of Hardaway if that's the direction you want to go. But I digress. Could he continue that trend? Yes, but I would suggest that the median for him always balances out to being somewhere in the 33% three-point shooter range and somewhere in the 40% field goals. KP should implement Dirk's style of offense to preserve his body, or should he, says Nick asks Nick Reyes. Yeah, I would. I absolutely would. And that's why when I was talking earlier about him not attacking the rim as much, I think that's perfectly fine. You don't have to go try and put a dude on a poster. Dirk dunked at times, even pretty late in his career, but he didn't try and go dunk through traffic on a dude. You pick and you choose your spots. If you can build that low post game, we know KP's integrated a step back. We know he's got a sweet pull-up jumper, and he can actually cross over and do some stuff like that. That's all awesome. That's great. That is why you are the unicorn. But if you can implement some of just the subtle moves Dirk had in the low post to create space, I'm not saying you got to try and lift his one-legged fadeaway, although that'd be a fantastic homage to pay. Of course, if you don't already have it in your repertoire, I'm not saying try and add it right now 1 week before the start of the season. But if you can just use and integrate little moves like that to create space, I think you could do a lot of damage still offensively while preserving yourself. Sickum 800 says he wants Tim Hardaway Jr., to be a 6-man contender. That would be awesome. So do you put on your story that they are going to draft a player and then sign someone? Asks Dallas Hart. So you put on your story that they are going to draft a player and then sign someone. Are you talking about my preview article I'm doing before the season, talking about trades at the deadline? Or are you talking about a different specific article? I'm a little confused on that. Do you think Carlisle will have... I'm taking... guys, I got time for 3 more questions, and then I got to wrap up. Big homie from the D. If a team wants Brunson, they got to take Hardaway. That would be fair, although you would be shedding a lot of bench scoring at that point. So what you're getting in return better be able to make up for that. Dirk and Holger should definitely take KP in the lab and teach him all the post-up moves. That would be awesome. I would love to see that. We know Dirk's going to be around. He's going to be involved now. I don't think you're not going to see Dirk sitting on the bench. You're not going to see Dirk sitting in a suit on the bench or behind the bench or anything like that. His involvement with the team is not going to be that public facing. It's going to be more on the back end. Mark Cuban keeps talking about how he's going to talk to Dirk about a possible minority ownership in the team. That's great. That's cool. I like that. But yes, I agree. If you still got that relationship with, obviously you've got it with Dirk, but if you've still got that relationship extension to Holger, dude, by all means, work with our guys. Work with Luka and KP. You doesn't have to just be the 7-footers. You can work with Luka as well, the 6'7" wonder boy there, and try and implement all of that creative footwork and lower body strength building and all that, the flexibility test and all that Dirk did throughout his career, whether it's the, I don't even know what you would call it, like the lunges and squats and the long jumps, basically the full length of the court and back. That would just wore Dirk's ass out every offseason. Can do a lot to build the lower body strength and balance and all that. Of course, that's only if the player's worth it. It was about how they were going to build the team so we can win. Oh, it's talking about him in my article. If I think that the Mavericks are going to draft a player and sign someone. I'll have to do some digging to figure out what... it's impossible to say right now what the draft pick is going to be. We don't know. We do know they'll have their first rounder. So if they don't make the playoffs, that means they're in the lottery and they'll have a low percentage chance at getting a high draft pick. That could turn into something, but we don't know. I think it's actually easier to project a little bit towards free agency because we'll have a year of seeing Luka and KP together, and we'll have an idea of what that looks like, which we didn't have this past offseason. And even Danny Green said, hey, I was considering the Mavericks legitimately, and I was intrigued, but I was intrigued on the hypothetical, on the theory of what they would look like together. Whereas here, it's an immediate fit to win now, pays me just as much money. I get why he went to the Lakers. I'm not complaining that he went to the Lakers. I'm just saying he said he was legitimately interested in Dallas and he wasn't just trying to use us as leverage to get a better deal or anything like that. It's just how it worked out where he looked at it and he was like, I know what I have here with the Lakers and LeBron and Anthony Davis. I have no idea what I have over here with Luka and KP. Luka looks sweet, but KP hasn't played in a long, long time. How is he going to look? And Dallas has been bad the last few years. How are they going to look? I get it, is what I'm saying. Do you think Kleba could crack the starting lineup? Asks Elijah Reagan. He's a better floor spacer and defender than Powell. There are going to be nights he could crack the lineup. I think he's also a better three-point shooter. As you say, floor spacer. Same thing. I realize I just basically repeated that part of what you said. He's a much better rim protector as well. He was our best rim protector last year, even when DeAndre Jordan was on the team. My problem with Maxey is you can throw him out there for 25 minutes as your starting center and he'll get you 4 boards. He's never been a high rebound guy, and that is concerning to me if I'm going to roll him out there as my center. Because if you got KP is a notoriously not good rebounder either. His best year of his career, I think, was 6.7, I want to say. Luka, as a rookie, averaged more rebounds than KP has ever averaged in his career. Now, I think KP will bump up that number a little bit this year, but you still got to put a consistent rebounder next to him. If rebounding is already an issue for us, putting Maxey there next to him really concerns me because, yeah, you got a great rebounding backcourt with Luka and DeLon Wright. It's a rebound by committee, and KP will be a little better too, but I'm just not in love with the idea of Maxey as my regular starting center for that reason. Eric Anthony, what's good? Your timing is a little unfortunate as I am going into the wrap-up, but always love seeing you in here, fam. I'd rather have Nash working with Luka. Nash works with the Warriors, right? I mean, if you could get Nash, that'd be sweet, but I don't think that's on the table at this point. I think Justin Jackson's going to have a breakout year, says Micker45. I agree, and that's why I've been calling it for, a month and a half? 2 months? I don't know. To be fair, I've said this before, but I'll repeat it. I don't think I was the first person to say something about, hey, what about Josh Jackson? But I definitely have been on that train longer than just about anybody. I wrote a preview piece making the argument for starting him, putting him into the starting lineup, and it was within the next 3 weeks that suddenly you saw all these articles popping up talking about a similar thing. Now, to be fair, there are some good ones out there. I think Jake Kemp of The Athletic had a great piece on it. Had some metrics I haven't even considered, some advanced stats metrics I hadn't considered, that even made the gap defensively between him and Dodo even more narrow than I had even anticipated. So I think Justin Jackson has a real chance to be a breakout player this year for the Mavericks. I think he will be the surprise player of the year for the Mavericks. I think he'll be the guy that a lot of fans who might not be paying as close of attention, they're going to look at some point in this season, maybe towards the midway point or something like that. Something like a quarter of the way into the season, they're going to be looking and they're going to be like, dude, do you see what we're getting out of Justin Jackson? Like, are you kidding me? Like, we're getting... Now, he averaged, 13 or 14 for us last year in the games he started. I don't think you're going to get that, per se. But I think you'll see such an efficiency from him in terms of his three-point shooting, 37% last year. He's done that multiple times in his career, so we know it's not a fluke. You'll see enough of him being able to create on the slash with the floater games and all that. And I think defensively he'll be competent as a team scheme defender. Now, he's not a versatile defender. If you got to shut someone down or you got to slow someone down, you're going to want to put Dodo out there. I will yield that. But if you're just within the scheme of it all, team defense, you can certainly throw him out there. Seth Curry works great for that too, by the way. Do you think Courtney Lee's lasts the whole season or gets traded out? I think he'll get traded out. He's an expiring contract, and those are very valuable when trying to make the financial situation work in trades. Dallas can say they like him, they want to have a role for him and all that. That's well and good. But I think at the end of the day, he's a very appealing contract to move in a trade because teams like to shed a lot of cap space at the end of the year. So if they're getting rid of someone and they can take on his salary, yeah, they can deal with his salary for the rest of the year, knowing it falls off their books and it opens up that summer for them. That is always the kind of contract that gets moved, and I think he'll be one of them that gets moved. Hardaway Jr. playing with a chip on his shoulder, says Mano. I agree, and I would like to see that. He talked about wanting to become the next Michael Finley for the Mavericks, comparing Luka and KP to Dirk and Nash previously, which, that's kind of cool. But at the same time, I'd say, I don't know that you're Finley, but I like the mentality. I like the attitude. I like the chip on your shoulder. Justin Jackson is the starter for sure. Wish we could trade Tim Hardaway Jr. Doubt that happens. I think you'll have Tim Hardaway Jr. for contract this year and the next. So I think in that case you're married to him for at least this whole year. But I think he can be effective for you. I'd say give him a chance coming off the bench for you with a more talented team now and see what you're able to do with him, because I think you're going to get a better Tim Hardaway Jr. than you saw last year. Why not 13 or 14 for Jackson if he's starting? Based on the shot attempts that we've seen from Luka and KP in the preseason, I think they're going to be taking up the lion's share of all that. And then you're still going to have your flamethrowers off the bench. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to shoot, as if it's going out of style, as if every shot's a buzzer beater. He's just going to get the ball and look for a shot. Seth Curry's going to get shots. You're going to have Brunson getting shots. I think it just boils down to the shot opportunity. I don't think Justin Jackson's not a guy that attempts a ton of shots per game. Like he's pretty efficient, and in the small dose of games he started last year for us, he was able to score 13 or 14 a game. I get it, but I don't think that there's going to be enough shots to go around for him to average 13 or 14. Dodo has to constantly receive minutes because of his lockdown ability on defense. I agree, and that's all the more reason why I don't think Jackson will ultimately average 13 or 14 a game, because he's going to have to divide minutes with Dodo. I think they're going to be a two-headed monster, and that's going to be an interesting experiment to see how you balance the two of them without taking too much away from offense versus defense. I think we have too many guards, says Eric Anthony. I tend to agree, but the team is what it is at this point, and we'll see what they do with it. Jackson, 10 to 12 points on 28 minutes, does not look to shoot when he can sometimes. I think that 10 to 12 is a pretty decent spot for him. And keep in mind, that's still above his career average, so it would still be a solid piece to get it. Because, again, he's not going to be your third option right now. That's just not what he's set to be. If you're getting 10 points out of Jackson, you're getting it. Dorian gets tough rebounds, too, and Jackson doesn't rebound, which is Dorian's biggest edge. So it's going to be interesting, though, guys. We are a week away. It is almost here. Almost here. We'll be ready to talk Mavericks. We're going to get the schedule tweaked where we can have any back in here. We're going to talk some Mavs Fastbreak then. We'll try and sprinkle in some... we'll try to sprinkle in an extra show during the week if we can. So you'll get 2 Mavs shows per week on the channel. We're going to give you some game companions at times where you get our live analysis and reaction as we're kind of calling and watching the game and everything. So be on the lookout for that. A lot of great stuff coming. Thank you to everybody who was in here tonight. You guys are awesome. Love talking Mavericks basketball with you guys. You make this so fun. And as much as I'm looking forward to this season, I'm looking even more forward to talking about it with you guys. So until next time, thank you for watching. And remember, every legend was once a prospect. Salute.
Self-high-five.
Mic check 2 1 2, bitch.